time. I know we'll have plenty of our colleagues joining shortly. My name is Aaron Petrillo, and I'm the TA lead here at CIID, the Center for the Integration of IDEA Data. In today's webinar, we'll be partnering with CEDS, Common Education Data Standards. You'll hear from some of their folks and folks who work on both teams later in the call, Dwayne in particular. And during today's session, we're going to talk through how to utilize CEDS during data integration activities, which is certainly a focus of CIID. Just a reminder to folks that today's webinar will be recorded. We'll start all of you on mute, but during portions of the webinar, we'll unmute to allow you to ask questions. On the right-hand side, you'll see a Q&A box, which we encourage you to ask any and all questions, and we'll try to answer them throughout the webinar. But certainly if it's a specific question to your state, we are more than happy to connect with you after the call as well. And we'll try to post all of the responses along with the webinar recording later in the week. So with that, just some quick introductions. My name is Aaron Petrillo. I, again, as I said, am the Technical Assistance Lead, co-lead here at CIID. And today we're joined by Anthea Brady, who is also on the Technical Assistance team for CIID, but certainly has an extensive knowledge of CEDS. And also by Dwayne Brown, who is the CEDS Deputy Director, but in his other life also serves as a technical assistant expert for CIID as well. So I'm leaving you in good hands for today's webinar for both CIID and CEDS knowledge. So, and with that, we wanted to hear from you all in terms of what roles you have. On the right-hand side, you'll see we just started a poll to just get a better understanding of who we have in the call itself, whether you're a part of the IT staff within your team and data steward, project manager, special ed staff, business analyst who maybe has better spell check than we do, and then certainly other roles. So, if you have multiple folks in the team, you can select multiple positions. So, give you a couple seconds to fill that out. All right. And Travis, you want to just bring up the results there? And we just want to do this to have a better understanding of who we're talking to, and certainly to be able to help describe the benefits of CEDS based on the right context that you're coming from. All right, so certainly seems like we have a good variety of folks, definitely on the special ed side, and it's good to see a balance of IT staff as well. I think we'll certainly try to balance the discussion as well, delving into some of the technical work, but certainly that is relevant to special ed and data steward staff as well. So with that, I'll pass you on to Dwayne and Anthea.
Great. I'll take over here. If you want to pass the ball over my way, I can advance the slides. That's great. Very good. Actually, as you mentioned, my name's Dwayne Brown, the Deputy Director on CEDS, and I want to go over the objectives for the webinar. They're rather simple. Basically, we want to learn how CEDS can support data integration and understand how to use the CEDS tools in a data integration project. And I don't know how familiar you are with data integration, but it basically goes something like this. You decided to store a data element and call it element A and give it 10 option sets, and then I decided to store that same data in a different system, and I called it element C and gave it 12 option sets. Why did we do that? I don't know, but we did. And now we have to move that data together into one system. And it's more than one element. It's usually hundreds of elements, and they could be similar, they could be different. You might have it, I might have it, we might not have it at all. But basically, how can CEDS help you with that process when you're looking at doing data integration? And that's what we're going to cover in the webinar today. The agenda, we will look at how CIID uses CEDS for data integration, talk a little bit about the toolkit that CIID has put out. We'll go through a fictional scenario with state X, and then talk about how to take next steps with using CEDS. So first up is going to be how CIID uses CEDS for data integration. But before we get into CEDS and start talking about that, we want to do another poll, and we want to see how familiar you are with the Common Education Data Standards. So if you would go ahead and answer that poll question on the right, and remember to click submit, and we will kind of get a good idea of how familiar you are right now with CEDS. And I think that it has ended, so we can bring the results up. Okay, so there we go. All right, kind of a mix there, not familiar at all. We have some individuals, we've got 2 3s, pretty good amount, but we got some in the 1 2s and 3 range, and then several non-answers. All right, very good. We are going to move on here. Now that we've sort of gauged your familiarity with CEDS, we're going to talk a little bit about what CEDS is. So hopefully the poll numbers will go up a little bit after you finish this webinar. It's a national collaborative effort to develop voluntary common data standards for education. It's a vocabulary that has definitions, it has option sets, it has technical specifications. Essentially, we have a voluntary common vocabulary. Why do we have CEDS? As I mentioned before, because you made element A with 10 option sets, and I made element C with 12 option sets. Wouldn't it have been nice if we had a place to go to for a standard way to name and define all of this, so that you would have ended up with element B, which actually should have had 14 option sets, and I would have ended up with element B, and it also would have 14 option sets. So it would have a common vocabulary there. And CEDS contains both user-friendly element names as well as technical names, full sentence definitions, notes about how the element is used, option sets if those are applicable, and applicable domains such as K-12, post-secondary, early childhood, workforce, anywhere where the element would commonly be used. So it really goes into a great deal of detail, pulling from lots of sources, EdFacts, CIF, EdFi, ISO, wherever there's a standard that exists, and if a standard doesn't already exist around that element, then CEDS works with an enormously large amount of stakeholders to actually define those elements out. CEDS, who is CEDS? CEDS is you, really, everybody on this call. You are education data stakeholders, anyone collecting, storing, or using education data, or those who build the products that collect and store and use education data. Those are the stakeholders who drive CEDS. We receive input from all of the stakeholders on the screen, and probably many more that we might not have listed on there. CEDS attends and participates in all kinds of conferences. We are in work groups, we are in organizations, initiatives, anything related to education data where there's stakeholders just like you. That's how the standard is driven. So if you go to CEDS, literally, and something is missing, or you need something, or you have a question, or you need a tool, you're the one that drives that. You would contact us and we would help to get what you need for your state or your organization. Okay, back to our data integration woes. The education environment comprises data elements and definitions that, even though they're similar, they differ enough to require constant translation, transformation and conversation, transformation and research and integration, and reporting, and wherever data elements are involved. If you translate that, that means a lot of money and a lot of human resources. We're constantly translating what we say with education data, and we're constantly doing translations in ETL work, in systems that we're integrating, and so that's where CEDS can step in. Your SEA speaks a different education language than my SEA does, and within your own SEA, your program staff speaks a different education language from office to office, right? We grow up with an education language from whatever we're familiar with. When your systems are built, your IT staff speak a different education language than the program staff does. And so when they go and they build something, they're going to call it one thing, and then there's going to have to be translations. This is where CEDS can come in and help bring those disparate standards together under a single collaborative effort. To do that, CEDS has free online tools that can help with data integration. Align provides a bridge between data sets where data stewards can use CEDS elements to map across different systems. And we're going to kind of show that in a little bit here. Your element A equals my CEDS, or your element A equals CEDSB, and my element C equals CEDSB also, right? So now we have an alignment. Align shows you the comparison of the element definitions and option sets for each element. So if you're more into algebra than international flights, CEDS works like the transitive property, basically. If A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. So it helps you to bridge that gap. Multiple data maps can be compared in the Align tool, and we'll show you how to do that to identify duplication or gaps of elements within data sets. Connect and MyConnect, those tools can be used to design how data elements are going to be used. So Connect allows you to find and build use cases, which we call connections, by selecting CEDS elements for reports, for policy use, performance indicators, research, etc. And then MyConnect, you can apply that, which links the connection with an Align map. So you see how the data in the map is used in a specific report. You're going to see your own data elements in the MyConnect report. So we'll go through those and kind of show how those work in a little bit here. SEA staff can make an account on ceds.ed.gov at any point to develop a map. It's free to go on there, and we'll show you how to do that as well, and use other CEDS tools. Using Align to map data systems can be done actually prior to a decision to integrate. So as an exploration step, you could do that. A state could see how the process works, understand the challenges that they may have or that they're going to have when they need to do the integration. They'll know what information they need to integrate, and it could be a benefit to discussing integration by allowing you to demo the type of work needed to start the integration with others in your state. So it's a good starting place when you're looking at that. There's no special license or training needed to use CEDS. There's plenty of tutorials and resources available, so it's easy to start using it. You can just go right in and start using it. And as if that weren't enough, CEDS and CIID staff are actually here to help provide assistance and training. And in some instances, we can even do the mapping for you for free. So we can help with those Align maps. If you can get your data system metadata to us, not the actual real data, but the metadata, the names of the elements, their definitions, if you have those option sets, and then we can actually do the mapping. Okay, so that's where it fits in. Now that we've talked a little bit about CEDS, let's talk real quick about the CIID Data Integration Toolkit. I want to point out this is an excellent resource for any integration project. I know that CIID is primarily focused on IDEA data, but this toolkit will span any integration project you're going to do in your agency. So it's a very useful tool. It would have been nice to have this as a reference when I did integration work as a state employee in the past, but alas, it did not exist then, and I won't go into any stories about how things didn't always go the right way. I'm sure you have those stories. I have some of them as well. It would have been nice because this would have saved me a couple times in some of the things that went wrong. A lot of good reminders and steps in this toolkit that often get overlooked in an integration project. So a lot of good things in there that we just may forget to do, and it's good to have that as a reference point. So for this webinar, we're going to focus on how CEDS can help primarily in steps 3, 4, and 5 of the toolkit. The toolkit supports the use of CEDS for data integration, and based on input from other webinar evaluations that CIID has conducted, this is why we're taking a deeper dive into the CEDS tools and how to use them to support data integration efforts, because there's been a call for that. Steps 3 and 4 are where you would locate all the potential elements and where you're going to create that master integrated data set. The toolkit includes pointers to CEDS and some information on how to use it. And then for step 5, CIID has created an ETL template that uses CEDS Align maps, and then you can visit the CIID website and you'll be able to access the toolkit and view webinars about that there. All right, with that, I am going to turn it over to Anthea, who's going to talk a little bit about our scenario today that we're going to walk through.
Anthea, you might be on mute.
I'm sorry, I am on mute. So I'll just back up and let you know that the scenario we're going to walk through, it might be similar to one that you will encounter in the future with your SEA and working on data collections. It might be something that's already happened to you, but it is entirely fictional, so any similarities with your work are completely coincidental. So we're going to start with the current state of things in state X. So things in this scenario, they might be a little bit alien, but you may recognize some events from your own state. State X's EdFacts files are submitted on time and with accurate data. But the SEA wants as much data as possible into their new statewide longitudinal data system right now. So today we're going to look at two sources in particular, CEDS and XSIS. So CEDS, that's their special education data and reporting system, and it's the authoritative source for data for students with an IEP. And then the student information system called XSIS is the authoritative source for student education data. So we're going to introduce sort of the players in the scenario. Dana Scully is State X's Part B data manager, and she's responsible for submitting State X's files. So she finds she's spending a lot of time creating the file for C009, the Children with Disabilities Exiting Special Education. So right now, her process for doing this, it could be much more efficient because she has to search the student information system by student ID to validate student active data is correct, because she's generating a report in CEDS and she's generating a report in the XSIS, and they have different counts of students with disabilities. So right now she needs to use both systems to create an accurate report that reflects all students with disabilities who have exited special education. So Scully asked her boss if there's support for moving the CEDS data into State X's statewide longitudinal data system called the XLDS. So she works to get support from the leadership in her office, so the director of special education, her boss, and they know that this idea has kind of already been floated in the state, so they think it's a good idea. They draft a proposal and bring it to the chief information officer whose office manages the XLDS. So State X's CIO agrees. He thinks it's the right time to integrate CEDS into the XLDS as well, and you know, they all realize that creating a solution in the state where the data manager only needs to run one report and where the state has increased confidence in the quality of data is a really good idea. So now we'll talk about what that process looks like. So Dana Scully and the XLDS staff, they start first thing, they get together to figure out what's the best way to integrate the data. And the XLDS team suggests that she uses CEDS to view their XLDS aligned map and to get more details about what data they have and where there's overlap or redundancy. So Scully heads over to CEDS.ed.gov to check it out. And we have a quick poll we're going to pull up just to get an idea of folks on the phone if you have a CEDS account. So if you do, or if you think you do, feel free to answer yes, and then no, but you plan to get one, and no, you're not sure right now if you need one. So as Dwayne mentioned, the CEDS team, we can help with a lot of things. We can help you create a CEDS account, and we'll provide contact information at the end of the webinar so that you can contact us, and we'll be happy to help you with that. All right, so we can pull up the results, and as we do that, we're also going to turn it back to Dwayne, and he will take us into CEDS to look at what the next steps are. So great, it looks like about 28 people on already have an account, which is awesome. Dwayne, I am turning it to you.
All right, we're going to go in and take a look at CEDS. So I am going to share. And it should come up here shortly. And there we are. All right, some of the things we're going to look at here, actually, we're going to the real CEDS website, not a PowerPoint. So hopefully everything will work correctly. We're going to first, from the poll, talk about creating accounts. So if you go to ceds.ed.gov, right there on the front page, if you don't have an account yet, you can click on that. It's free, doesn't cost anything. You can just go in there, and it's got where you put basic information, name, password. I would recommend keeping some of these checked. If you do, we don't send out very many emails, maybe at max 2 a month, maybe 1 a month. We have a quarterly newsletter, and then we kind of let you know when some new connections and new resources appear. But the purpose of creating an account is basically so that you can save your work, because you'll be able to build line maps and connections, which I'm going to show you, and so you need to be able to access that information, and so that's why you'd have to have an account. Okay, so first thing we're going to take a look in here is we talked about Dana Scully at CEDS, and they're wanting to do some integration work, and so she's going to actually build a CEDS align map. She's familiar with their XLDS. It's already in CEDS and aligned to CEDS, so this is going to make it a lot easier for them to go in and compare the CEDS system, that's special education, to their XLDS, and I'll show you how that works. So to actually create an align map, she would go to the align tool, but she would have to do. So we will get in there first, because it can save what work she does. So she'd head over to align, and inside the align tool, lots of different reports and options. There are tutorials you'll see over on the right, resources, and that stuff to help you learn about how to use it. But over here, she's going to build her own new map. Going to name, I already have one for her, so test. And for the state, whatever state that she would be with, she would put that in there. It helps to keep track of the different states that are in there that have maps that you can go, helps researchers and different things in the future. If it's a project for more than one state, they'd select that, and then not applicable would obviously be for like organizations or things that build maps as well. So we're just going to select that for now. You also have early learning, K-12, post-secondary, workforce. These are all the different domains and elements that are inside of CEDS. P20W, so what is the domain that you're actually going to be working in? Is it primarily K-12? Is it going to be P20W? So we're going to pick that. And then SLDS map, that just helps with the SLDS grant program, keep track of which of the maps are related to SLDS. And since this is XLDS, it is related, so we're going to go ahead and do that. Affiliation type, SEA, LEA, other. Affiliation name, we know that we have X here. This could be filled in if you want a description of the map here for now, and then we're going to create the map. So pretty simple. Now we have the test CEDS map right here. She's able to go in there, and now she can start to manage that and take care of that. One thing to point out related to the maps, when you create one, it's private. It's yours. You can do whatever you want to with it. You can go in, you can play around with CEDS. You're not breaking anything to go ahead in there, create an align map, test it out, put some elements in, play around. It's not a problem at all. You can go in there and do that. It also has map administration, which lets you control user access. So let's say that you and about 3 or 4 other employees at the State Department of Education are going to be working on this map or need access to that. You can actually manage user information access and grant them access to the map as well. You can give them the same authority you have to administrate it. You can give them authority to just make changes to elements. You can also just give them read-only authority so they can just go in and look at it. So you have that control over the map there. Also, there's reports that you can look at, and we'll look at some of those. And then if it's something that you'd want to share out as a resource for others to look at, then you can also share the map. You can share it with some individuals who are not associated with your state by putting in their account email address, or you can share the map with everyone and they can take a look at that. And there's several different states and vendors and EdFi and things that have shared maps that you're actually able to go in and take a look at right now. And it just provides a resource, because sometimes states want to say, I'm curious how other states have done this. What do their elements look like? How'd they set that system up? I'd like to see that, and they're able to go in and see that if the map has been shared with everyone to look at. So first thing she needs to do is she needs to get elements into her map. So she's got a map, but she's got to get her own CEDRS elements in there. What we have is she can actually do it manually if she wanted to by clicking this, and then she would go through one at a time and just type in her elements right there on the screen. Or she has an option to upload her data dictionary straight into CEDS. And there's a template available that you can look at, and I will go ahead and pull that up so you can see what the template looks like. There we go. Might be a little hard to see there, but basically what you're looking for are those elements in yellow. That's what she would be looking at: the system name, database name, table name, element name, information about if it has an ID, the definition. If it doesn't have a definition, that's fine. If you don't have system name, all that really has to go in is the element name, because that's what you're going to be aligning. Data type, length, the option sets, description about the options, and then over here is where you would actually do some of the mapping. So through the magic of webinars, we already have her map filled in. That's remarkable. We have the system name, CEDRS, the database name, table name that they've called that, and then what they've put for their actual element names is listed right here. Their definition for how they would call that. If there's any option sets, I didn't put a full set because it'd be too much for the screen, but this is their disability codes, for instance. I just put a couple of those. And then I put a few of the exit codes from special education, but not all of those. Over here, you're going to see some IDs, and these begin to represent the CEDS elements and the type of alignment they are. Is it a one-to-one alignment? Is it pretty close? Would transformation be necessary from their element over to CEDS? But these numbers over here represent the CEDS elements. And so we have quite a few elements in CEDS, and they span across different domains. We're going to take a poll real quick. I'm going to stop sharing here just to see how knowledgeable you might be, just for fun, and see how many elements are actually in CEDS. So if you could click on there and see how well you do. Do you know how many unique elements are inside of the Common Education Data Standards? Give you a second or two to fill that out. I know when I worked in the state of Oklahoma as an SCA, we actually did a count of the elements we were pulling from the student information system. Ended up being about 200, not quite 200 elements that we were pulling. So that might give you kind of a frame of reference, and we pulled quite a bit of data for the state of Oklahoma. All right, we can get the results to come in here. Since the poll has ended. And there we go. Oh, we've had some people that are paying attention. We have, nobody put it low, that's good. 750, 1,000, 1,500. We actually have just over 1,500 elements inside of CEDS. And with each round, we usually, we add anywhere from about 50 to 100 more as we take a look at what's going in the education world. And so regularly elements are added about every year. It's somewhere around 50 to 100. We started out with 161 when CEDS began in 2010. And so we have that. All right, did we have a question come through real quick? Well, we'll get back to that one. All right, we'll do the questions kind of at the end because I'm not able to see those. We're going to go ahead and share back over here. Share my screen. There you go. There it goes. All right, now it's coming up. Great, okay. So we're back over here with our Dana Scully map. So she's got her information here, and she's going to make her way over to CEDS. She's saved her file, and she is going to upload this into CEDS. So it's going to bring her to a place. She digs around, takes a look, tries to find the CEDRS map. There it is. And shouldn't take too long to bring that in. Now, the reason this is here is because you may have more than one worksheet inside of an Excel spreadsheet. So this lets you select from whichever worksheet it is. I know that it's the metadata one, so we're going to select that. And then here, you may not have called your columns exactly the same as the template. In this case, we use the template, and so it's actually going to be a one-for-one match that we can do and make our way down. But if you didn't call it the same or you don't have everything, you wouldn't have to go through all of them and click them. So whatever it is that you would actually be uploading is what you would do. So if your column names are a little different, you're just letting it know this is where I have the system name, this is where I have the database name, that sort of thing. Then you import the data. All the data went in, and now we can go over and take a look at the elements that are inside of there. So these are her elements. They've been loaded. Let's take a look at what it looks like inside of there. Here's the disability code, student's primary disability. It's been aligned over to the primary disability type inside of CEDS. Here are the option sets. There's additional information you could store about it if you wanted. The column name of the actual table instead of just the element name. References to the element, maybe legislation, who's the data steward, who's the internal contact, is the element required, optional, conditional, so various different things that you can actually store inside here related to your element, and you're able to pull all of that out inside of reports. So now that she's got that loaded, one more thing to show you is the alignment process. So we have the disability code here, and if she wanted to, let's say this wasn't aligned to the primary disability type, we're going to get rid of that. She would go in and say, okay, I have disability code. Where is that located in CEDS? It's related to the student, and it's going to be related to their disability. Here's primary disability type. You can open this and take a look at it. It shows all the different option sets inside of CEDS, the definitions that we have, usage notes, where it comes from, that sort of thing. She aligns to the primary disability type. Their definitions aren't quite the same, but they have the same meaning, and we're just going to say they have the same option sets as CEDS because they have to do with EdFacts in this particular situation. So that's it. She's now aligned over to that particular element. Let's close out of here, and since we know that StateX as an XLDS map, we are going to go over there to align, and we're going to take a look at a report that allows her to go and look at the two maps side by side. You can see in here all of these states that are in bold. Various different state agencies have shared their maps so that others can use those as resources. So it's a great resource. If you're able to share a map, we can help you map that at CEDS, and CIID may be able to as well for different instances where you can share that resource out so others can see kind of how you structured it and how you've defined elements, how you're doing things. I know I see a lot of emails that come through the EdFacts thing. How does state A do this, or how does state B do this, or how do you guys do this? A lot of that information can be found right here in seeing how different states maybe store data. So we're going to go take a look at our two maps, and through the magic of webinars, once again, these are the two. So we have the CEDRS map that she loaded, and we also have the XLDS map that had already been loaded in there that contains the XLDS data. We're going to take a look at the data dictionary plus CEDS, and then we're going to click next. We're going to have this side by side. So basically what we just did is a gap analysis. We have the American Indian or Alaska Native, we have Asian, we have birth date. These are all CEDS elements on this left side over here. In the middle, we have the CEDRS map, which is our special education one. It's got the system, it's got the database table and system database table and column names. So in CEDRS, they called it student race, and in the XLDS, which is the third column, they called that race. So if we move down, CEDS calls it birth date, which is the third row. CEDRS called it DOB, and XLDS called it birth date. We could scooch down further, and we can see that in the CEDS, it's the IDEA indicator. In CEDRS, it's the IEP flag. And in the XLDS, they called it IDEA. State student ID, student ID. So it gives you basically an analysis of all of that where you can see side by side what does XLDS have, what does CEDRS have, and where do they line up, and it used CEDS as the bridge. And if we scroll a little further down, we see that CEDRS does not have the, or CEDRS has the disability code and XLDS does not. And in order to do C009, which is exiting, and it's done with a subcategory of disability, we have to have that. So that's an element that's going to have to be integrated into the XLDS. Good to know that XLDS does not have that. We also have entry date information and enrollment information in the XLDS that our special ed system does not have. And we have program participation information in CEDS that XLDS does not have. This is where Dana had spent a lot of her time, right, going through. While I can see that they didn't put them as a dropout in here, but over in the XLDS, they have a dropout exit code. Or I can see they gave them as a dropout in the special ed system, but when I go over there, I can see they're clearly enrolled in the school, so they're not a dropout. So all that work that Dana has to do is why she's wanting to integrate this data together. And this shows where the two different systems would integrate. And there's, of course, different things that will have to be done related to is the state school ID list inside of CEDS, the same as the XLDS list, and having to work through those things. But this gives you a starting template to be able to do that and helps you go side by side. And this is steps 3 and 4 in the CIID toolkit. So laying out all those elements from each system that are going to be integrated, determining the duplicates and the differences, and then you have to determine which one is going to be the master element. So now that you have that, let's go over and take a look at one other tool, which is called Connect inside of CEDS. And basically, Connect answers the questions, right? Why are you actually integrating? In our state X scenario, she's integrating because she needs to be able to do C009 exiting for EdFax, and she needs an easier way to do that. It's a lot of time-consuming work that she goes through. If we integrate it, we can pull that report automatically. We can make it a lot easier. So there's some kind of use case. Why are you doing the integration work? What is it you're trying to solve? And with Connect, this is where you put in your use case, right? This is where you start to put that in. You put the elements that are needed to fulfill the use case. In our case, that'd be C009 elements. And then you put in analysis work that you'd have to go through and do those. So what elements are needed for C009? Before you start listing those elements on a piece of paper or an Excel spreadsheet in a non-standard way, right? You're just going to start, okay, we need the birth date, we're going to need the ID, we're going to need the, and now you're using your own vocabulary again, right? So before you go through and put them on Excel and that sort of, go to Connect, go to CEDS, and use the common vocabulary and list the elements out related to C009 for that. So we're going to pull this up. And there are hundreds of connections in here that you can use, not just things related to that that are inside of here. But we're going to pull up. You can see here there's one related to generate that is inside of here. And this is actually the full connection with all the different elements. This is related to CIID, the generate project, if you're familiar with that. Has all the various different elements in there related to that. Has analysis recommendations, how those map over from EdFax over to CEDS, that sort of information's in there, and you can take a look at that. But we are going to use a different one. Let's go to C009, and I'm not finding that one. Manage. There it is. Oh, I call it demonstration connection. That's why I can't find it. Okay. Let's go over to here. There we go. So here's our connection. I didn't put all the elements in that are necessary for C. I don't have any of them in there. Why did it not keep those? Well, we're going to do it differently. That's the magic. That's the magic of the webinar disappears. We had magic and now we don't. So let's go over instead and use the one that's in generate. All right, here we go. So with generate, you have the elements in for C009, or with Connect, you have the elements in for C009. And a lot of the EdFax files are inside of CEDS. We have CRDC in there. We have researchers who are putting things about chronic absenteeism and employment outcome indicators, all those kinds of questions that you would want to answer, and they've listed the elements out that are necessary to do that. My Connect, when you click on that, takes you over and lets you choose your different maps and see how those maps line up with the information that you have inside of your align map. So we'll click over here and we'll do My Connect and bring it down, and we can see the data elements for CEDS to do C009, and then we have over here, we have the CEDS system. So we're going to need race. Here's race. We're going to need birth date, and we're going to need information related to that. The no corresponding element lets you know where you may have gaps inside of your map or inside of your system. You need that enrollment entry date, that enrollment exit date, so you know if the kid's enrolled or not to be able to do that. Down below, we have information related to the XLDS, and now that lines up. We can also put these two side by side, which would make it a little bit easier to take a look at here. You can see here we have the primary disability code for the CEDRS map, but not over here, so it helps to line those up. We're going to need all of these elements on this left side in order to be able to do the C009 report for the exiting. So we'd put those in. So it basically lines it up and says, here's the question we have, C009, exiting. How do we do that? What are the elements we need to do that? And then here's where those elements are stored in your system. So we're taking a look right here, and we actually see this table name and the column name and the database name of your own system for StateX, where that data is stored, so that you can actually go through and do that. All right, so that is the MyConnect tool. Let's you take a look at how you can do that. I'm going to go back up here, and we are going to stop sharing. And at this point, I'm going to hand the ball back over to Anthea. Grab that. And we'll probably head into a couple more things and then into some questions.
Great. Thank you, Dwayne. And feel free also, if you do have questions, you can enter those into the chat box, and we'll be able to answer them. If you want to send them anonymously, you can select all panelists. Otherwise, feel free to enter them right in there. And I know some of you have been sitting through Dwayne's demo going, that's great, but where is Fox Mulder? Well, he works with the IT team. So Scully and Mulder, they get together, and she hands over the CEDS material that's going to be used to integrate the data. So Dwayne took us through kind of steps 3 and 4 of the toolkit, and now we head over to step 5, which is working on the extract, transform, and load, or the ETL plan, and working on a test plan so that Mulder is able to update the XLDS, and then Dana and the team can test the data to ensure that it is accurate in the new system. So where is StateX now? After they've done the data integration work, Dana Scully is able to create file C009 from the XLDS, and she's confident of the XSIS exiting data that's in there. She only really needs to run her validations and do those queries against the CEDRS system instead of jumping back and forth to make sure that her data is accurate and her count of students is correct. So she goes ahead and she submits that file over to OCHEP and CES, and they review the data, and it looks good. They don't have any errors with their file. So we hope this scenario kind of helps to bring to light what we actually do when we talk about using CEDS for data integration, and kind of how we're going into the CEDS tools and using them, and how it can be helpful in speeding up our process. And if only data integration took an hour, but CEDS does help with us, not having to reinvent the wheel or sort of create new tools to use in each of our individual states that are able to access sort of a single tool to make things easier. So I'm going to turn it back over to Dwayne, and he's going to tell you about a couple of the CEDS resources that we have available.
All right, great. And I see some questions are coming through. We will get to those real quick now. In just a second, I'll go through these CEDS resources. There's the mapping toolkit, which is on CEDS, and it kind of walks you through the whole process. If you want to do the mapping, it's got the upload template there. So you can go through that, gives you some tutorials there. If you would prefer video, we also have video tutorials that'll show you how to use Connect and Align, and so you can watch people clicking around on the screen and see how it's actually done, and those are broken up into segments, so you don't have to watch them all, but you can see the different parts that you need to look at. We also have the CEDS community, and at ceds.grad360.org. You can go there, and there's other resources there. You can post discussions or ask questions. One thing I'd point out that at the community, we have some other videos that we don't put on CEDS.ed.gov, that we've kind of just recorded webinars that we've done in the past. And so there's several webinars that you can watch there to see different ways that CEDS is used. And you'll see those in the community, but you won't find them on the main CEDS website. So that's some reason to join that community. And of course, if you have any questions at all after this, or you need any help or anything at all, feel free to contact us at ceds.ed.gov. To click the contact us, we pay attention to that all the time and get back with you. So any reason at all you want to click that, you can feel free to click that. At this point, we're going to do another poll real quick, and that is kind of an interest inventory. Give you a few seconds there. This would help us kind of understand a little bit more about what you've learned and what you might be interested in learning more about out of those tools. So a line we went through, Connect and My Connect, the toolkit, and then of course the community that I just mentioned. Give you a few more seconds on that. And then we'll get to the questions. Go ahead, as he's pulling that up, the results for that. I'm going to move it over to there, hand the ball back over to Anthea, and then we'll probably answer some questions.
Great, thank you, Dwayne. And just seeing we have a lot of interest. I think we have interest in almost everything in CEDS tools, which is great. So we're going to take some time for questions, and while you're furiously typing or thinking of a question you'd like to ask, we have one more poll that we're going to bring up. And just to think back to when you answered the question right at the beginning of the webinar, what's your knowledge of CEDS? We want you to just think, all right, now that you've seen this webinar, how much has your knowledge of CEDS increased? So 1, it didn't increase at all, to 5, 100%, as you've got as much as possible about CEDS. So we have that up for a little bit, and one of the questions that we did get in the Q&A asked about when you're aligning elements between CEDS and your data dictionary, how do you handle scenarios where the element type or length differs? And so one of the tools that the data integration toolkit has is an ETL template, an extract, transform, load, and that's kind of where you would take into account those differences and how you would manage them in data integration. And our ETL template uses the CEDS elements. And I know Dwayne was one of the folks who created that, so feel free to add on a little bit there, Dwayne, if you need to.
All right, yeah, we had the poll just came through too. We had a little bit of increase there in knowledge. That's good. There's also reports on CEDS that you can pull out. It doesn't necessarily go into all the types, but you're able to pull them out. That lets you easily consume them and do some extra work. So when you get the data in there, you can pull everything down related to the types that CEDS has and the types that you have. But you'd be able, when you do those comparison maps, to pull that information out, and then you can kind of compare, because you're able to put the type in, the data type, the length, that sort of thing, into CEDS, and you can then bring that out into Excel files where you can run those side by side between the two systems, and then you're able to see are the types the same or they're not the same, but you're able to do that type of work through a report in CEDS.
And Dwayne, I'll throw another ETL question to you. Can you explain more about how we take the information from CEDS Align and we use it for the ETL? What's the sort of export process look like?
Right, so you're gonna run the report that I'd shown, and then you can pull that down into Excel. That's going to give you the information about where the two systems are. And so you're looking at what your destination system is. You're going to want to have that inside of CEDS, and then you're going to want to have the master integrated data set, so like where you're coming from and where you're going to. Actually, the two systems you're coming from, and then the master integrated data set where you're going to. So you pull all that out, and then there's several different things obviously you're going to run into. We're going to put things related to, is it a one-to-one? If we're going to do validation here, what's the transformation that's going to take place? But you pull the basic report out of CEDS that lines all of that up for you. First shows you, system A and system B and where they're the same. And then that's when you start making decisions about what's going to be the source authority. Now we've got that written down. So I've got the two systems. I know which one's going to be the authority. You kind of walk from left to right, across the screen in an Excel spreadsheet. Two systems. This one's the authority for this element. And then on the right side, destination, where it's going to end up. Okay, so in between, what are we going to do to it in between? So I have my source system. So CEDS kind of gives you that whole left side. And then if you put the destination system into CEDS as well and line that up with those CEDS elements, you'll also have the right side of the equation as well. So you'll have where it's going. And then you'll just have to work through the middle part of saying, how are we going to transform this element from system A over to the destination system where it's going to finally end up integrated together.
And Dwayne, I'm not sure off the top of your head if you can answer this one or if it's one that we can take back just to do the right digging. We've had some questions about the EdFi model and if there is an alignment in there already.
If you'll hand me the ball real quick, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So let's go. All right, very good. Share my screen. I'll show you how to get to it. Make sure this comes up. Very good. And we're going to go in here. Anybody can do this, whether you're logged in or not. You would go over to Align. You can explore the map-based reports. Click Next. And EdFi, because they could actually technically go into more than one state, but they put theirs into the not applicable category, which we may change at some point. Just funny joke, because we were at EdFi conference and they're like, we really don't like our map being in not applicable. Can you change that to something else? And so we may actually change that just because EdFi asked us to something other than not applicable, because EdFi is certainly not applicable. But that's where their map is right now. So let's expand out here. And they have EdFi version 2.0 aligned to CEDS 6.0, and they also have EdFi version 2.1 aligned to the version that just came out. So you can actually click on that and then go in, and you would be able to see all of the different EdFi elements. So this is the EdFi Data Standard 2.1, absence, event, category, descriptor, code value, and then where it aligns to CEDS is all the way inside of this map. So EdFi 2.1 is in there. So if you actually run your own map locally, you can then run it and put it against this one or put it next to this one. So you can see EdFi's absence, event, category, descriptor, code value equals my whatever inside of my own system using CEDS as the bridge between the two of those. So that is definitely inside of there, and they update it basically as soon as we have our next release, or our release out, they get it. So July 12th, version 7 came out, and just less than a month later, EdFi had the mapping in there. So we definitely have that. And I see there's another question related to how does CEDS relate to NEDM, NEDM. If you're not familiar with that, that's like a transfer process. We've actually had conversations with them, and we're working presently on a NEDM gap analysis to kind of look at what does CEDS have, what does NEDM have. NEDM doesn't have a lot related to education. It's primarily a transport protocol that's for juvenile system or police, that sort of thing, and that's kind of how it had it start. But they're starting to kind of move into the education realm a little bit, just on a few things, because it's related to juvenile justice and that sort of thing. And so we're looking at that and possible talks of, can CEDS then be utilized as the standard, which would obviously make sense for going into NEDM. And so there's conversations that are taking place related to that, because what we certainly don't want to do is have anyone reinvent the wheel again. So that's what we're doing there. So right now, it's a very extensive standard, and so we're doing a gap analysis with CEDS and NEDM to see what we have and what they have and what the differences are.
And Dwayne, I see a lot of questions still coming in, so just while we answer as many as we can, we're going to move to the next slide just to show some examples of how CIID and CEDS can help, and also the resources that we have available for around CIID and CEDS. If you could passing the ball, I can advance those. And then just a quick reminder for folks, we do have an evaluation, and that will pop up right at the end of the webinar as we close out. We'll also pop the link right into the chat box right now so that you can click on it and go there if you need to exit early. We do have a spot in the evaluation where you can ask for support from CIID and CEDS. So after you finish the evaluation, if you want to ask us to help with any questions, definitely go through and do that. And we will hop back into the Q&A and see what else we can answer in the next few minutes. Dwayne, there is one that I'm having trouble rolling up to. Does CEDS allow you to add state-specific fields when you do an alignment?
Okay, so as in adding your own elements, or I'm not entirely sure how that question is likely to add state-specific fields. Well, everything in the map is state-specific. So like your element name, your database name, your column name, your comments, your references, so everything in there is state-specific. And then you're just aligning that element over to CEDS so that you have that bridge to anything else that's been aligned to CEDS, whether it be a connection, a research question, somebody else's map, another map inside of your own agency, mapping over to EdFi, whatever it is, you have that bridge built. But everything in there is state-specific. If you're talking about are there other elements, you can add any number of elements in there that CEDS does not contain. They just wouldn't be aligned to CEDS. So if you have things like, for instance, you collect the boot size of all of the kids because you're in Texas and that's just an important element that Texas has decided to collect. I'm from Oklahoma, so it's okay for me to say that. So you collect the boot size. That's not going to be an element inside of CEDS probably ever, but you can put boot size into the align tool. You just can't create the bridge from your boot size over to somebody else's boot size element because CEDS doesn't contain the element. But you can certainly store as many elements as you want.
And Dwayne, I have one last question, and then we will wrap up. When CEDS creates a new version, what happens with the old versions, and what happens to your map when elements are added or changed?
So nothing happens to the map. It stays the way it is with the version it is. So there's no problem there. So you still can access your map. We are also working on a report that we'll have available that will show you with your map, did we make a change to any of the elements that were inside of your particular map. We try not to make changes. Sometimes we improve a definition, but when we look at certain things, we're like, we can make this more broad, but we don't want to break anything backwards. Sometimes we have to, but ultimately our goal is not to do that. But there'll be reports here probably in the next 3 months or so, maybe 4 months, that you'll actually be on Connect and on Align that'll show you that information, whether or not you were impacted by the change. But otherwise, your map stays fine. So
great, thank you. So there were a few more questions that we did not get to. If we have your contact information, which I think we do with your emails, we'll try to follow up just to answer those questions that you asked. Feel free, though, to contact me, Dwayne, or Aaron with any additional questions specific to the webinar. Otherwise, you're always welcome to reach us at CIIDTA@aemcorp.com. And that brings us to the end of the session. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and thank you to Dwayne and CEDS. for collaborating with CIID on this webinar. I just remember, don't exit just yet. We're going to close out and we'll bring you right over to the evaluation, which will open in a new window in your browser. And we appreciate everyone's time for today, and we'll talk with you at the next webinar.